very much, Rachel. Okay, my last reader today is someone I've known for a while, although we haven't kept in touch too much lately. He decided to move to St. Paul, Minnesota, and I decided to move to Sullivan, Missouri. Brendan Funk earned an MA in English from Missouri State University. He has taught English composition and literature courses since 2004 in many areas. He currently teaches at Metropolitan Community College and Kansas City, Kansas Community College in the KC Metro region, where he lives with his wife and two minx cats. The cat thing is a theme. Currently finishing a book-length poetry collection with the working title, A Week's Worth of Good Mornings. Brandon's poetry has appeared in the Mid-America Poetry Review, the Oklahoma Review, and the Moon City Review. Please help me welcome Brandon Funk. You know it's going to be good reading when he has to take out his keys first, don't I?
I realized I didn't need them for reading. Thought I did. Before I forget, I really like that one about the pie. That's good. Yeah, that was fun. All right. I just want to start off with something I wrote quite a while ago, but like almost everything I write has gone through a lot of editing. So keeps changing, probably always keeps changing until I'm just so sick of it or give up. So this one's called Love to All You Strangers. The man behind the station desk told me with pertinent eyes, a la trace, and made with his hands the shape of a clock and nodded until I did. He did not know I understood the language of how a bus departs from its stall in Monterey, how Volkswagen taxis scatter from its shape blundering into traffic. I did not let him know I spoke a bit of his language, or how hours in a bus station in northern Mexico can seem like a whole swatch of childhood. Sean's father had, an hour before, put us on a bus in Saltillo and held Sean's face in his hands and cried as a man does in the state of Coahuila, a man who drinks too much brandy, knows his son will never speak to him again. The ticket man could not have known these things or conceive of what we ourselves had never imagined. Women who wore long skirts and flooded the tile floor with pails of soapy water and pushed it all down a drain with long rubber squeegees. With their rag mops they gathered the rest, the wet tile gleaming under incandescent light. We picked up our feet, and as they came by, no senora among them paid us notice as the sway of the cloth that reached above the hems of their skirts drenched with rinse. An old mestizo sat across from us and slept, but I was for sure he died right there, the last Indian who ever saw the Virgin of Guadalupe, and who was lied to by the old Castilians who owned the hacienda where he cut agave. She's come at last, they said, and he cried, because either he believed it, or he knew there was none else to believe, the eagle having lost the serpent in its beak, the last of the old sun burnt away. That poem was written a little bit about a memory of going into Mexico across the bridge in Laredo, into Nuevo Laredo, which apparently is not safe anymore. And apparently it wasn't safe then either, but we did it, so less safe now. This poem is sort of a love poem, I suppose. It's called Youth. Felt a bit slick and crude, tart like a peach that longs for a bite. Felt for a light in the dark, found a mirror, a frame, paraphernalia for a woman's morning dews, an ottoman, a bedfoot, a door. Stubbed my toe and damn, it hurt. Found the sink and let cold run out. Recently learned to wash my face, not in the dove-like puritanical ways of a virgin, but in earnest, as a cat paw daubs its own grin, or a coon with a half-a-rotted crawdad on the shoal of a spring creek. Driving to work. Dark like a winged shadow, or the inside of a glove lay across the suburb at dawn. Trying too hard to wake is the fault of having slept like my dad in drabs, but better after having showered and shaved, eaten breakfast, tied the tie. Never did anyone's dark mornings sprawl like rows of houses and elms and lawns, like in this January on the way back from sleep to where I am made to work. A shapeless space of floor where another owns the body for labor's good purpose. I am not prone to believe in a life of perpetual motion, that our leaving and returning in cars will someday benefit me, the rainmaker, the postman, or the spindly boulevard poplars, too naked to interest even the drab winter cardinal or her mate. Okay, so we had a found poem earlier, as I remember. I just recently learned, I wrote this poem some years ago, but I just recently learned that the term cento, C-E-N-T-O, means found poem. I don't know who made that up or what Latinate expression that comes from, but I decided to name this poem, for the lack of anything else, cento. Find a Fitgers can in the pines 40 miles west of Duluth. Unsteel a shape that holds rain and grubs, who leave the place in bad repair. Shake loose the dirt and bend the off-label back like a nail. Forget disposition. Drink from the can, the drop made by worms in these woods mown. So I guess that's a bit of a remark to the image that Mr. Stroop was talking about earlier. You have to have not just abstraction in the poem, but sometimes all you have is the image, and all I had was a rusted out beer can that I found in the woods, which wouldn't have been so great except that it was old enough to have been opened with a can opener, right? So it went back a few years and it still had the paint on it. And, so anyway, that's where it wound up as in a poem. This next one I have is a sonnet I wrote when I was in graduate school, and I always remembered that Josh liked this sonnet for whatever reason. I think he may have been the only person who liked this sonnet, actually. But anyway, I'll read it here. It's called Clarinet. At Close Pond, silver black geese gather in troops and take bread from suburbanites. They squat all year at the park, growing fat on swill in greasy plumage. I'd rather the dull flocks of snows than Canadians whose ubiquitous V's in spring and fall are no less welcome or believable than the accustomed fowl of city ponds. But people are this too, thinly haired apes gone feral. We sponge, lice-ridden, and curse at anything which fails to please. At Close Pond, I mistake these intrepid geese for people who should not have been born, and honks from their elongated necks for rape. Just act like I didn't do that. Oh, thank you. That might have had something to do with it, but probably didn't. Thank you. I was thirsty. All right. You know what? I tried tried to put, I tried to stack all the happy stuff at the beginning. Okay, so that was about as happy as it gets, all right? It all goes downhill from here on out. Not necessarily, but sort of. So this next poem is about a funeral, which its title tells you, and which you can't really miss. But it was about the unfortunate experience of going to my own brother's funeral a few years ago. And it's called Funeral at Marsh's Edge. Red-winged blackbirds flock in iridescent black. The bells sound, and by nightfall we will long for their ring. Someone died, or something else. The path to hell, paved with trucks and limousines, lies obscenely serene. The deacon's word is death. The poor bastard's luck was jelly rolls and cigarettes. To the south, roaches black as plums sleep high in the palms, and our heart and thumb thoughts like sawgrass bend toward and incise the skin of dreams. The rest submerges. I realized recently that these next two poems I have go together as a pair, which I never realized before. As in, I knew they were about the same thing, and I knew they probably needed to go together, but I didn't realize they belonged on the same page with each other until like 3 minutes ago. So I think while I was reading that other poem, I realized this. So, which doesn't seem possible, but I think it's true. So both of these poems are about one of the most difficult things we do, and that is preserving our long-term relationships with people, and in this particular case, it's about marriage. So both of these poems have ironic titles, and I don't really know which one is supposed to go first, so I'll just put the one that I wrote first because I can't figure that out. This first one is called Rapture. She says, "Give me small, beautiful things. I shake them at her like a fistful of rice. I pour them like seeds into her open palm. She threads them onto a strand of silk and says, 'We need more things like this.' I write them on the backs of diner napkins, on dollar bills, in narrow lines of grout. We lose track of them for months and forget we had them whatsoever until one day in another season, another life, we find these wishes on tax forms, pressed into the ironing board, turned inside the linen cuffs of jackets. When she says, 'Where has happiness gone?' where to find them she's unlikely to look. In the knife drawer, cobweb behind the whitewashing machine, or folded deep in the curl of the conch. Creation myth. When I showed it to my wife as she walked into the room, she laughed, though it wasn't funny. Having eaten the banana, tropical remains and a moldy odor imbued the office. I folded the cellulose walls of its shape back again for another second, to live as was intended. I held it like a crippled wren, but still it seemed a whole thing, not a vacant husk of its own skin. And another, let's see what's after this. Let's see what's next. All right. I give some time for air in these, you know. This one's called Negotiating Sleep. I've never been a good sleeper. Anybody in here suffer from this? not good at it, and some people are very good at it. They just go to sleep instantly, they sleep well, they talk about how well they sleep after they get up, to your annoyance, right? But this is called negotiated sleep. I figure if you can't get it naturally, then you have to, you have to be a capitalist about it. You have to go and figure out how to get it. I give her the last hour of my night on this night, and 29 years of nights I have yet to sleep. I gladly hand over like ransom my 2 good shoes for her flower beds to tend, a peony, and smooth rocks dusted with pollen. In exchange for it, I surrender a glass of bourbon and a week's worth of good mornings. But what for clean chinos, jagged tin, the candle's smooth wax? I can't say what I'd give, since at this hour, all I own are a sandman's rags bound to a luckless corpse. Therefore, I bid her grace, intuition, wool for the mind's light, and words piled like cordwood for sleep. All right. So this is a poem that I guess I would say that I wrote quite heavily for 5 or 6 years when I was younger, when I was in my early 20s, and really I got quite kind of, I don't know what the term would be, cynical I think the term would be about it, and I really didn't do any writing at all for about 3 years, although I did a lot of reading in that period, and a lot of reading of things that I wouldn't have ordinarily read, like Paradise Lost, for instance. Have you ever sat down and read Paradise Lost? I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying, have you ever sat down and read it? No, you should. You should read it. Anyway, I suddenly came back and started writing these poems, and this is one of the first ones that came out of it, and it's actually a long amalgamation of several poems. So what I'm going to read goes on for a while, not too long, don't worry, but there's a lot of pauses in between as I go from section to section. There's also a few footnotes I have to give you here. I mention something about planting a bush in this poem, and I use all 3 different names that the bush is known by. It's a serviceberry, or a Saskatoon, is what they call it up in the North Country, and it makes the blueberries that they make this nasty jelly out of. And the Latin name is Amelanchier. This also has a reference to a couple of ancient Greek figures, although they're very famous ones. Achilles, everybody knows about him, and Leda. And Leda is the figure who is immortalized in W.B. Yeats' great poem Leda and the Swan, which is about the story of Leda being either seduced or raped by the swan, depending on how you, depending on if you're an optimist or a pessimist, I suppose. This is called Living in the House. I don't understand why a sense of things no longer has meaning to me, why the ice melts at all, or if so, why slowly from the brick mold under the roof, how it cracks as the sun shines and reflects into itself. Spiders propagate in leaf shade. Their gauze spans clapboards, and dew gathers hazy in the webs, like in the hair of a dead girl. August is persistent and fleeting. At a glance here, then gone again. I was not born in these woods feudal. A fawn limped home with 3 proud legs. I reckoned it better to be woods grass, lit from humus. Or did I mistake? My gaffe is well-intentioned, like a squirrel's plot for winter, lifeless and stiff but fulsome. The geese, no matter how adept they believe themselves, own fates as ill-conceived as we who watch. Take the goslings, for example, how their pale, downy bodies banter with the others, and how the parents themselves dote and banter and protect their kind as if God gave them that strength, a patch of grass, gave them illumination, but spared the rest of us. Three small things kept me awake in a night cool enough to have the window ajar. A polecat shuffled in the narrow wood which lines the city block, and all night I heard footfalls. Then a woman's breath, varied but relentless, quarter after quarter of a minute. Last, in the dark of the room, and most disconcerting, a benign swell of tedium edged into the border of my vision. Two small, happy people in daylight planted a shrub in the front yard, watered and mulched, set sun and soil to work on it. Crows call out neighbors. Old men say a crow will talk if you split its tongue with a jackknife. The ornithologist writes of how the drake gives himself a name so the others will recognize it. The crows say, damn the ornithologist. Serviceberry is a tree, not a shrub. Starlings will have those Saskatoons. Whatever truths there were in names we thought we knew are inimitably gone once the roots of a Malenchier have grasped the foundation of the house like the first sucker twig up from and over the foot of Achilles. When I surmise what is meant by tangible perception, it is rather not like lovemaking, that of clean sheets and skin, nor gentleness or sarcasm, or the heat of the crotch, not the junco's dance or the cruel persuasion of cats, but how Leda must have felt, there ridden by God become a swan. The self inhabits just a fraction of what the body demands, much like the upstairs closet, unwindowed and capacious, smooth rod and wire hangers, misshapen by the unbearable weight of dust trapped in a spider's silk of its uninhabited space. Too many pauses, you don't know where to get. And here's another one. How long do we have, Josh? We got 19 after.
19 after, we have about 4 or 5 more minutes.
4 or 5 more minutes.
There's a class in here at 12:30.
Alrighty. Let me see here. All right then. How bad do they want to have class in here? I'm just kidding.
It's financial accounting, which is the poetry of numbers, so. Be here. Should be nice.
Well, it's a good time of year for accounting, I have to give them
Yeah,
that.
that's true.
Well, here's another sonnet I wrote when I was in college, and that I remember Josh Struble liking. I know, it's very strange. I shouldn't have given him so many of my poems, apparently. This one's called Farm Boy, and it's written in dialect, if you're wondering. You know damn well there's work to be done. There's straw to strip and wood to cut if the chain ain't gone dull. If I was you, I'd split a rick to burn this week and next. The winter's nearly done, and soon spring planting will have to start, first with spuds and then sweet corn along the fence line, then summer squash, beans, pea pods. For spuds, you'll have to till the loam twice, and it'll be 4 days' work going by the sun. Life is work, boy. You take that medicine and swallow it hard just to stay down. Don't you forget the straw, and don't lie down too long after lunch. I'll be coming by. All right, I guess I'll end on this poem. And it's an elegy for a professor who was very important to many of us at Missouri State. An elegy for Michael Burns, who passed away a few years ago. And there's several references to Burns' own poems in this poem, but that doesn't matter. They sort of work in both directions. But if you know Burns' poetry, then it will come out. There's also the title of the poem is Reading Burns in the Basement, which if you talk about poetry and you're reading Burns in the basement, you probably should be reading Robbie Burns, the Scottish poet. But in this case, it's Michael Burns. The only other thing I can think of in here is Dickel is the name of a bourbon. It's important. Reading Burns in the basement. If you think I'm speaking Scots, you're wrong, Titmouse. I'll testify in any goddamn room of the house I'll choose. This floor sump reeks of mold, and the masonry seeps Dickel. So drunk I'm speaking Mexican down here. Yet the vermin have moved outdoors, and there's only me, a ghost of forms, and the poet who once authored here below grade. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you all again for coming. We'll be doing this every semester, hopefully. If you want to talk to any of the poets, if they're willing to stick around, we'll probably find them